Today, we're digging into one of history's greatest archaeological mysteries. It's a Bronze Age superpower known only through what it left behind. Its bricks, its beads, and its bones. So think about this for a second. Imagine a civilization as huge and as organized as ancient Egypt or Mesopotamia. But there are no grand temples to kings, no epic poems telling us about their conquests, and no Rosetta Stone to unlock their secrets. What if it just vanished? Well, for thousands of years, that's pretty much exactly what happened. A massive, sophisticated world was buried under layers of dirt, its language silenced, and its entire story just untold for 4,500 years. The name we've given it now is the Harappan civilization. It was thriving between 2600 and 1900 BCE, and this was its peak, its mature phase, the high point of a culture that stretched across a huge chunk of South Asia. So, who were these people? Let's try and piece together the clues they left behind in what really feels like a forgotten empire. So, what have archaeologists actually found? Well, we've got some really defining features. Their most famous artifacts are these beautiful stone seals, usually carved from a soft stone, showing these incredible animal figures and lines of a totally unique script. The catch? To this day, nobody can read it. And this civilization wasn't just some small kingdom, it was massive, with an economy built on both farming and long-distance trade. But maybe the most stunning thing about them was how they built their world. Let's take a look at their urban blueprint, and we're going to use the incredible city of Mohenjo-Daro as our guide. Forget the winding, chaotic streets you might picture in most ancient cities. The Harappans, they built on a grid. Their streets and roads crossed at perfect right angles. That level of planning was just unheard of for its time. The organization this reveals is just incredible. Cities were typically split into two parts. You had a smaller, raised area called the citadel, probably for public buildings, and then a much larger, lower town where everybody lived. But the real genius was in the infrastructure. Get this. They laid out the streets and the drains first, and only then did they build houses along them. Every single home was connected to this amazing drainage system. And they clearly valued privacy. Houses were built around central courtyards with no windows on the ground floor facing the street. And if you want to talk about standardization, just look at this ratio. Every single brick, across hundreds of towns and cities, spanning thousands of kilometers, was made to this exact proportion. The length was 4 times the height, and the width was twice the height. That is a stunning feat of centralized planning. Okay, so we have these perfectly planned cities, but what was life actually like for the people living between these super standardized bricks? Well, thanks to things like charred grains and animal bones that we found at dig sites, we know they had a pretty varied diet. They were growing grains like wheat and barley, raising animals like cattle and goats, and they also hunted wild game. What's interesting is that rice seems to have been pretty rare, mostly just showing up in certain regions. So, was everybody equal? Probably not. And the way archaeologists figured this out is actually really clever. They look at the stuff people owned. You find simple, everyday items made of clay pretty much everywhere. But then you have luxury goods, like these little pots made of faience, which is this rare material made with really complex technology. And those are found almost exclusively in the big urban centers, like Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa. That strongly suggests there was some kind of social hierarchy. But these cities weren't just islands. No way. They were the bustling hubs in a massive network of trade and resource gathering that stretched across continents. Their supply chain was just remarkable. They set up settlements on the coast just to harvest shell. They got that precious blue stone, lapis lazuli, all the way from modern-day Afghanistan. They sent expeditions to Rajasthan for copper and way down to South India for gold. This wasn't just random chance. This was a coordinated, international operation. And the coolest part? We actually have external proof of this. Ancient texts from Mesopotamia, that's modern-day Iraq, talk about trading with a place they called Meluha. And scholars are pretty sure that Meluha was the Harappan region. They even called it a land of seafarers. Okay, but think about it. How do you secure goods that are being sent hundreds of miles in the ancient world? The Harappans had a simple but absolutely brilliant solution: the sealing. Here's how this ingenious little system worked. You'd tie up a bag of goods with a rope. Then, you'd slap a lump of wet clay over the knot. Finally, the sender would press their own personal, unique stone seal right into that clay. So when the bag arrived, if the clay seal was unbroken, the person receiving it knew 2 things for sure. One, the goods hadn't been messed with, and two, exactly who sent them. It was like an ancient combination of a padlock and a company logo. So all of this, the incredible organization, the standardization, the vast trade networks, it all points to a highly complex society, which of course leads to two huge questions. Who was in charge and where did they all go? I mean, the sheer uniformity of everything. That 4:1 brick ratio, the standardized weights, the seals used from Jammu all the way down to Gujarat, that just screams that there was some kind of powerful central authority. We don't know if it was a king, or a group of priests, or maybe a council of rich merchants, but someone was making decisions and enforcing them on a massive scale. And then, around 1900 BCE, it all starts to fall apart. By 1800 BCE, most of those great planned cities were just abandoned. Now, the civilization didn't disappear completely, but what came next was like a shadow of its former self. The distinctive seals, the weights, the writing, it all vanished. The grand cities were gone, replaced by a much simpler, more rural way of life. The people, the cities, the entire state, it all just faded away. But they left behind one last, tantalizing mystery that holds the key to understanding who they really were. This is it. Their script, it's not an alphabet. It's got somewhere between 375 and 400 unique signs. We found it on thousands of seals, on pottery, on tablets, and yet we can't read a single word. It is the final locked door. What stories are in there? Stories of kings, myths, trade deals, or the story of their own collapse? What are they waiting to tell us? That remains the greatest secret of the lost world of the Indus Valley.